Good evening. Welcome to QUT Web News. Queensland Fire Crews have been stretched to the limit, battling bush and grass fires across the state. Extra firefighters had to be sent to central Queensland to relieve their exhausted colleagues.
Squalling winds and high temperatures eased overnight, enabling fire crews to establish containment lines around several large bushfires burning across the state.
It's going to come straight for us.
Firefighters worked through the night to contain a large fire which had been threatening a resort on Fraser Island. While the fire is under control, 18 firefighters and 4 fixed-wing aircraft are continuing to battle the blaze. A large fire threatening the Orica chemical plant just north of Gladstone is now under control. Emergency Management Queensland says there are in excess of 20 bushfires burning across the state. Senior weather forecaster Rigg says while conditions have eased, winds may increase over the next few days.
Not a lot of rainfall in that, so we're not seeing a very large rain band come across, but hopefully we should get a little bit of rainfall out of that for eastern parts of Queensland on Thursday.
Emergency Management Queensland says bushfires burning across the state are mostly under control, but people need to remain vigilant as this may change. With plenty of fuel and more windy weather forecast, it could be a busy few days for firefighters. Sarah Shands, QUT News.
The search for a man feared drowned continued today after a weekend family tragedy. A speedboat had 5 people on board when it capsized on a sandbar south of Sydney.
Grave fears are held for a 47-year-old man who went missing when his catamaran overturned. Poor weather and severe swells forced rescue crews to call off the search at Bateman's Bay, which resumed today as conditions improved. 3 of his family members died. An 11-year-old girl found clinging to the upturned boat's hull is the only survivor. The family is believed to be on holiday from Victoria.
You just think it's somebody else, but when it's someone close, that really makes it hard.
All of the boat's life jackets were found on board. Questions are now being asked as to why no one was wearing them. Laura Evans, QUT News.
And it's been a black weekend on New South Wales roads, with 4 people dying since police launched Operation Slowdown ahead of the long weekend. 2 of the victims died in a crash in the Hunter Valley about 9 o'clock last night.
2 people are dead and 4 are seriously injured after 2 cars collided in Campvale north of Newcastle last night. The injured occupants of both vehicles were taken to John Hunter Hospital with serious injuries. In Melbourne, the body of a man has been found at a car yard in Geelong. The man, believed to be in his mid-50s, was found by passers-by late last night. Police investigating the death are questioning a 44-year-old man they believe was involved in a fight with the deceased. And a lucky escape in Taree when a light plane crashed into a Ferris wheel. Nobody was hurt when the aircraft became stuck in the ride at a local festival. Crews spent more than an hour rescuing 2 children stuck at the top of the wheel, as well as the shaken pilot and passenger. Ashton, Rigg, QUT News.
Pouring cool water on a severe burn is still the best way to reduce skin damage and ease pain. That's the advice from Queensland Children's Medical Research Institute, which has launched a new campaign to educate people on first aid treatment for burns.
After years of testing, the Centre of Children's Burns and Trauma Research says running cold water on a burn for 20 minutes is the most effective first aid treatment.
First aid has got 2 components. One is to relieve pain, which is very important, but even more important is first aid can also reduce the depth of a burn.
Professor Kimball says home remedies such as aloe vera, tea tree oil and ice were all found to be ineffective.
People have all sorts of ideas on what might be good for a burn. Ice is a common one, and we know that ice has no value in decreasing the depth of a burn.
Of the 1,500 burns in Queensland each year, only 12% of victims have received the correct first aid treatment. Here at the Royal Children's Hospital, 700 new children are admitted each year for burns, with this number steadily increasing. The Bailey family has had first-hand experience after 10-year-old David suffered extensive burns to his legs during a family camping trip.
This guy, he put too much diesel on the fire, blew up, and my shorts catched on fire.
David's speedy recovery has been put down to the constant flow of water, which was poured over his burns immediately after the accident.
I said to Stuart at one stage, why don't we just put him in the car and drive him to hospital too? And a couple of parents have asked me why we didn't do that. And my answer was, there's no taps in the car.
The launch of the Cool Burns for 20 campaign comes as burns experts from Australia and New Zealand hold a conference this week in Brisbane.
Alexandra Schultz, QUT News.
Swimmer Kendrick Monk is said to be grilled by Swimming Australia this week after lying about being the victim of a hit-and-run accident in Brisbane. The Commonwealth gold medalist claimed he was deliberately hit by a car last week when in fact he'd fallen from a skateboard. Monk said he'd made up the story because he panicked and was embarrassed about injuring himself in the lead-up to the London Olympics. Swimming Australia say they'll interview the 23-year-old in the next few days. Queensland Police are also considering whether they'll press charges.
It's been a huge weekend for football fans with 2 grand finals and the Wallabies continuing their World Cup campaign. In the NRL, Manly fans celebrated well into the night after the Sea Eagles claimed their 8th premiership.
Thousands of fans packed into Manly Leagues Club, hoping for premiership glory, and towards the dying minutes, they knew it was theirs. The celebrations had already started when the trophy arrived. But the real party was on Manly Esplanade, where fans partied into the early hours. It was a dream end for Manly, beating the Warriors 24-10 in the Trans-Tasman contest. For Manly fans, there's no sign the party's going to stop anytime soon. In AFL, Geelong Premiership captain Cameron Ling will decide his future in the next few days. If he stays, he's not likely to stay as captain, with the role likely to go to Corey Enright or Joel Selwyn. Ex-Bulldogs coach Rodney Ean is expected to take on a role as Director of Coaching at Collingwood, after Mick Malthouse said his time at the club is up. In New Zealand, the Wallabies are hoping to put their disaster against the Irish behind them. The Australians will face heavyweight South Africa in the quarterfinals of the World Cup, after Ireland continued their good run, crushing Italy 36-6. The Wallabies campaign got another boost after All Black star Dan Carter was ruled out of the rest of the Cup after injuring his groin at practice. Patrick Wright, QUT News.
2 North Ipswich schools witnessed a spectacular performance today as the Roulettes showed off their aerobatic prowess. It was a show of support for a community still fighting back from flood devastation.
The RAAF squadron spent 15 minutes at speeds of up to 590 km per hour, looping and rolling around Ipswich skies. The elite pilots put on a spectacular show in the Swiss-designed DC-9 aircraft as hundreds of children looked on. As well as supporting the town during the January floods, this was another way for the RAAF to give back.
The town was fairly badly affected by the floods earlier in the year. And, even though it's been a little while since the floods have occurred, we just want the local community to know that, a bit of time's passed, but they're definitely not forgotten.
This area of North Ipswich was one of the worst affected.
Where we're standing now, we would be 10 feet underwater.
The Roulettes made their debut in 1970, and they've been thrilling crowds in their current 6-plane configuration for over 3 decades.
Their name comes from their signature move, which imitates a spinning roulette wheel.
They are pretty much some of the best pilots in the world, and to do what they do takes a lot of skill, so they are very, very good pilots.
For the community, the performances meant much more than a simple air show.
I would say thank you to the Air Force for coming out here and doing this for us, and it's a really fantastic experience.
Although the performance was a big event for the school, it was by no means the biggest of the year.
I've been here 7 years. No, we had a flood. That was pretty big. The flood was probably the biggest event we've had.
George Branco, QUT News.
And now for a look at today's weather. There were a few isolated showers in the southeast, but it was a mostly sunny day elsewhere across the state. Looking at our Brisbane Skycam, and we can see cloud cover increasing through the day, bringing grey skies and a short afternoon shower to the city. A lovely day ahead for the Gold and Sunshine Coasts tomorrow with tops of 24. Winds will come from the south and seas will peak at 2.2 metres. And there's a fine week ahead for Brisbane with light rain forecast for Thursday. Temperatures will sit comfortably in the mid-20s through the week. And that brings you up to date with the weather. And that's all the news we have for now.
We'll be back tomorrow with more QUT News. Until then, goodbye.
Goodbye.